And congratulations to the entire team on the tremendous work going into the future of Xbox. And those stories have gotten more compelling as the technology has certainly improved. And so for me, the Halo universe is an amazing opportunity to be at that intersection where technology and myth-making meet. And I'm incredibly excited about the great journey we're all on, the heroes, worlds, and wonders that Halo will take us on. Thank you.
Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay? Pepe Sylvia. This name keeps coming up over and over again. Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia. So I say to myself, I gotta find this guy. I gotta go up to his office. I gotta put his mail in the guy's goddamn hands. Otherwise, he's never gonna get it. He's gonna keep coming back down here. So I go up to Pepe's office, and what do I find out, Mac? What do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia, you gotta be kidding me. I got boxes full of Pepe. All right, so I start marching my way down to Carol in HR, and I knock on her door and I say, Carol, I gotta talk to you about Pepe. And when I open the door, what do I find? There's not a single goddamn desk in that office. There is no Carol in HR. Mac, half the employees in this building have been made up. This office is a goddamn ghost town.
I know we are all recovering from the disappointing announcement that Halo Infinite will not be coming out until 2021, but that got me thinking about something else coming in early 2021, the Halo TV series on Showtime. Now, I seem to be the only Halo fan in my immediate acquaintance who has remained consistently excited for this, and I mean consistently. I mean, I've been waiting since 2013. Okay, no, I have stalked this show since 2013. Help me. And finally, just as my family was giving up on my mental sanity, news started coming out last year about the show. I don't like Halo lore vids that drag on and 1.2 long, and I'm trying really hard to avoid that in my videos, so I'll try to stick to the facts and leave the theorizing to the end if you want to skip that. This video will break down what we know about 1, its pre-production and inception, 2, the production, the crew, location, that sort of thing, 3, the cast officially announced and rumored, and 4, the storyline, what we know and what I'm thinking. So let's go over what my stalking and ranting has gleaned. Honestly, not a whole lot, but I hope there's some things in here new to you guys. So first, let's cover pre-production of the show. Real quick, let's cover the early attempts at a Halo film. Back in 2004, an epic blockbuster of a Halo movie was written with the names of Alex Garland and D.B. Weiss, with Lord of the Rings alum Peter Jackson set to direct. That movie fell through and eventually became District 9. To be honest, I'm really happy that movie fell through. Not for the people who wanted to see it happen, I'm sure it was disappointing. But I can just imagine it being some Assassin's Creed-esque, visually appealing but weak on plot or world building. And I don't think we were quite ready for the video game film adaptation back then, though there's been a few recent ones that haven't been so bad. That failed project is relatively well known, but during the 2007 writer's strike, avid video game and Halo universe nerd Stuart Beattie, a somewhat famed Hollywood writer, was reported as having written a Halo spec script based on the fall of Reach. Stuart Beattie said of the universe, "It's like our generation's Star Wars. The whole Halo nation that's out there, and a 100,000-year history of the Halo universe. It's just breathtaking, and so much fun to play in that sandbox. I've read every book, played every game, every graphic novel. It's just a fun world to be in." He was bored and took that passion to write up his ideal adaptation of the book. In a phone interview with Sci-Fi in 2012, and I think this year is important, remember that, he said, "I just think it's an amazing story about this child that no one cares about and who cares for no one else, who kind of ends up saving all of humanity." Beattie said in a phone interview for G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, "So I just started calling because I really believe a Halo movie would just be awesome, especially this Halo movie." Obviously, he was busy then, and there were no reports of the film happening, but rumors circulated that Spielberg had received a copy of the script and wanted in with the project. Given that he was busy with G.I. Joe and the failure of the Halo movie still fresh on everyone's mind, this script would be left in cryo for a few years. 4 years go by with hardly a word, and then suddenly this 2012 interview pops up on the internet. I get the feeling that many never read it, as the Sci-Fi Wire interview has 0 shares and has flown under the radar. Beatty even said further, as a Halo fan, he would be happy to see any capable filmmaker put this script on screen. He said, I wouldn't want to stand in the way of it getting made, but I firmly believe that the first Halo movie needs to be the Fall of Reach story, because it sets up all the characters, the world, the Covenant, the big struggle between mankind and the aliens, all that stuff, he said. So that's where my money is. Interesting. So just 1 year after Beatty does this interview, Xbox Entertainment Studios, a now defunct program, announces the Halo TV show will be produced with the help of Spielberg. That project then went silent for 6 years after the Xbox Entertainment wing closed, and the Halo show was once again adrift in space, trying to find a new home. Finally, in 2018, Microsoft announced that Halo had found a home with Showtime, and Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment was once again attached to the project to executive produce. If I had to make an educated guess, Stuart Beatty's script was chosen as the story Bible for the show. Now, you may be thinking, they have the Halo story Bible, why would they need a story Bible from a movie script? Well, thank you for asking, 1 of 50 viewers. The reason is this. A TV show needs a strong central narrative and theme, and as any Halo lore fans know, the Halo story Bible it's intense. It spans 100,000 years of lore and weaves the lives of many characters together. Since a TV show has a lot more time to explore a plot than a movie, but less time than 30 volumes of expanded lore, Stuart Beatty's story Bible would provide the background narrative, flashbacks to the Spartan program, this idea of a child or children failed by humanity becoming the saviors of humanity, the introduction of the Covenant, and the universe overall. So that's what we know about the pre-production of the show. Whew, that took way longer than anticipated, so I'll try to keep this next section as factual as I can. What we know about production. We know that the show is being filmed largely in Budapest. This is not entirely surprising. Not only does it have large tax incentives to make filming feasible for US and foreign partnered productions, but Budapest has a unique mixture of sites and locations. It's really easy to shape the world to whatever you want it to be, if you ever want to do off-studio location shots. You'd be surprised the amount of films and shows you've seen that were filmed in Budapest. Interesting to note that the planet Reach has a large Hungarian population. It's why George speaks the language during Reach's campaign, and may just be a sign that we'll have scenes on Reach, as it would be so simple to find Hungarian-speaking extras. The dual team of Showtime and Amblin Entertainment will be producing the show, though Kiki Wolfkill has said that 343 has acted in an advisory capacity to make sure that the Halo show treats the universe with respect. When faced with skepticism, many in the production have pointed out that they've waited over 15 years to get this show done right. They would have had no qualms about delaying the show if they weren't happy with what they saw in the script. Kyle Killen is set to be showrunner. Think of that as field marshal of the operation. His film credits are limited, but that's not necessarily the sign of a good producer. The director of the series was initially announced to be Rupert Wyatt, the director of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. However, he had a sudden and alarming departure from the production in December of 2019, which made Halo fans groan in unison as they saw history repeating itself once again. Why Rupert Wyatt left the production we'll likely never know. They say it was amicable and due to scheduling conflicts, and whether it was or not, having had backstage experience myself, that sort of stuff will likely never be known. Not long afterwards, however, in February of 2020, Otto Bathurst of Black Mirror and Robin Hood credentials was announced as the show's director. But Otto Bathurst is known for a dark, realistic, and gritty style that I think will translate well to the Halo universe, though we'll see. Other notes about production, the show was originally slated for 10 episodes, but has now been trimmed down to 9. Hopefully that just means we'll have less filler for the show. The other directors listed on IMDb are MJ Bassett, Jonathan Liebsman, Roel Ryan, and Jet Wilkinson. COVID-19 delayed the production of the show, and social media showed that the various actors had returned home during quarantine. But interestingly, in June of this year, Hungary Today, yes, I follow a Hungarian newspaper in hopes of updates, don't judge me, Hungary Today announced that restrictions would soon be lifted in international productions in Budapest. With it being such a key part of their economy, I'm not surprised. And that's that. That's what we know of production so far. Okay, so in this next section, we're going to take a look at the cast that have been announced for the show. Even though the plot hasn't been announced or revealed yet, many of these cast members can give us a lot of information about what the TV show is actually going to be about. So let's take a first look at the Spartans in the show. Currently, a number have been announced, but let's take a look first at the Master Chief. Now, when the Master Chief was first announced as being in the show, I remember there was a lot of fighting back and forth between Halo fans as to whether or not that was a good move. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. But I remember back, let's say 2 years ago, every TV show video on a Halo YouTuber's channel had to have this sentence in it. I want a Band of Brothers-esque show that follows a team of ODSTs in the Human Covenant War. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I felt like I heard that everywhere, and every channel I went to talked about that, and I think that would have been a good show. I think it would have been fun, and I think they will have that, or at least an element of that in the show, but Showtime probably knows that Master Chief sells, and they needed him in the show. But I think that having him as a co-lead, not the only lead, and also not as like a rarely showing up character who just shows up at the finale or something like that, having him as the co-lead is better. If you had him as the only lead in the show, he would have lost his mysteriousness. They would have written themselves into a corner because there's so little they can do with his character experimentally. But if they just had him as someone that just popped in and out of the show randomly, that really wouldn't have been, I don't know, fulfilling or satisfying for fans. So I think they made the wise move. If they're going to have him at all, they should have him as a co-lead. So he's going to be played by Pablo Schreiber, a Canadian actor who is the half-brother of famous actor Liev Schreiber. His career has rapidly risen in the past decade, and once I found out that he was going to be in the show, I did some looking into his career. And it has rapidly risen from Broadway to TV to action films and drama, particularly in the last 5 years, where he's sort of made a name for himself as an action star. His height is right for the part. He's a 6'5", which is pretty close to Master Chief's height, especially when they put him in the Mjolnir. What's funny about him is that every friend of mine I've shown his face to mentions he looks a little wrong for the Master Chief. They couldn't explain why, but really, to play the Master Chief successfully, you mainly need a few key things, though granted they are essential. You need to have the right physical acumen, obviously, the ability to handle weapons and play a military character believably, have a physical strength and presence, ability to express thoughts and feelings physically rather than on one's face, good voice, and the right humor and personality, which I think is a little discussed. But obviously, anyone who's ever read the Halo books will know that kind of getting that humor is right to play that character. A little discussed fact is that his career started on Broadway. And to be a stage actor, you have to have the ability to exaggerate your movements to express shock, fear, hope, heartbreak, whatever, without the minute changes of your face being seen by a camera in a close-up. Of course, this is so the people in the back of the audience can get what your character is feeling without seeing it well. This will probably bode well for him in the suit, because he's going to need to be able to express these feelings, these thoughts, without his helmet coming off. Speaking of which, according to a recent article, members of the press got to see a shot of the Master Chief in his Mjolnir armor, seated in a pelican, and supposedly he looked great. One reviewer said it was like the Mandalorian. Schreiber was indetectable behind the armor, and all you could see was the Master Chief. Also of note is that on IMDb, and granted it can be tampered with, so this may not be true, they have listed a teenage John, played by Logan Shearer, credited in one episode. If this is the case, if there is a teenage John, this will likely be a flashback episode explaining the Spartans' experiences on Reach and their augmentations. All in all, I'm hopeful for Schreiber's casting. His career covers a wide variety of film and TV credits. He started off, obviously, on Broadway, like I said, but he also went into TV, was in a TV show called The Wire. Then he did a stint for a couple different shows where he played either season regulars or one-off villains in a couple different shows. And then he started getting into bigger budget productions. He was in a movie called Den of Thieves. He was in 13 Hours, the film about Benghazi by Michael Bay. He was also in a TV show called American Gods, in which he played a character called Mad Sweeney. And I think if you watched that or parts of that, I haven't watched the show myself, but I did research on it when I found out he was in it. And if you watch his acting in that, I think you get kind of a good idea of what he can do. And that's really the interesting thing about him. I mentioned that friends will say he looks goofy for the part, but if you look at a comparison on all of the different roles he's been, the man is a good actor in the sense that he sort of disappears behind the different roles he does. He doesn't look the same in any of them, which is kind of interesting. Okay, next up, another Spartan that was announced for the show is Soren 066, played by Bokeem Woodbine, has been announced to be a key antagonist in the show, though I suspect he's likely going to be more of an anti-hero and foil to the chief rather than a straight villain. For those who don't know the story of Soren,
let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Soren 066 was one of the original candidates of the Spartan 2 program. Much like John, he was genetically and a mentally fit candidate for the program. However, unlike John, he suffered a traumatic experience in his youth, which had lasting ramifications for his story. Basically, his mother and stepfather lived on an illegal farm out in the boondocks of the outer colony of Dwarka. When his mother got sick, his mother and stepfather decided that it probably wasn't anything serious and refused to bring her to a doctor for fear of their illegal farm being exposed. She dies, and it mentally scars the 6-year-old. In the end, he blames his stepfather for his mother's death and injures him, even sitting by his body as he dies of illness. Only after his stepfather's death did he go seek out human civilization. Shortly after, he's picked up by humans and he's living in a city treated by psychiatrists where he refuses to tell the truth about what happened to his mother and stepfather. He's given a call by Dr. Halsey. Dr. Halsey has shown up to abduct him like she does all the other candidates. However, something about Soren strikes her with an idea. She decides to offer to Soren the choice to enter the program, a choice she never gave any of the other children. He accepts and excels in the program. Unfortunately, however, he doesn't stand out as a leader. In fact, he intentionally blends in to the back. He's sort of the antithesis of John. He's not a leader. He stays in the shadows, always in the middle as far as achieving goes, to try and not draw attention to himself. However, before the fateful augmentations, Dr. Halsey again gives Soren a choice as to whether he'd like to go through the treatment. Knowing the risks, Soren accepts, and unfortunately he is harmed by the augmentations, permanently maimed, and flunks out of the program. His delegation to desk work eventually troubles him, and he harbors resentment at Halsey and the UNSC for what was done to him. Eventually, an insurrectionist sympathizer converts him to their cause, and he defects. According to Showtime's character description, he is living as a privateer at the fringes of space until conflict brings him face to face with his old teammate, Master Chief. Really, Soren is a unique opportunity to show the other side of the Spartan program. They really are the mirror images of each other. John had a happy childhood, and chance, the flip of a coin, brought him into the program. Soren had a deeply troubled childhood, and he chose of his own volition to leave with Halsey. John was a natural leader amongst the Spartans, and Soren was remarkably good at blending in and not standing out in any way. John went through the augmentations and thrived. Soren was forever maimed. John does not question his loyalty to the UNSC and is so brainwashed by his indoctrination that his kidnapping does not bother him. Soren's lack of humanity troubled him so deeply that he rebelled and broke his bond of trust with his squadmates. Some allusions have been made between Soren's character and Ephialtes of Trachis in recent adaptations of the story of the Spartans of Thermopylae. I would suspect that Soren will serve as anti-hero, an audience lens for the insurrectionist, privateer side of the Halo universe. Like John 117, a teenage Soren is also listed on IMDb for one episode, played by Judd Cujo. Other Spartans have been announced, and it's safe to assume that for the duration of the show, They will act as a fire team together with Schreiber's chief. They likely will fill the role of blue team, but allow the writing department more liberties with their characters than with 3 already established and well-loved Spartans, who fans would be more likely to take issues with their portrayal. The first is Riz 028, played by Natasha Kulzak, described as a focused, professional, and deadly Spartan. Until I hear otherwise, I'm calling her Linda Light. Bentley Kalu will be playing Vanek 134, Master Chief's lieutenant and right-hand man. Until I hear otherwise, I'm calling him Fred Light. Kate Kennedy will be playing Kai 125, courageous, curious, and deadly. Until I hear otherwise, I'm calling her Kelly Light. All jokes aside, this is solid casting. All 3 are physical performers and will likely do well so long as they are given good material to work with. I'm sure I'll come to see them as their own separate characters with their own identities. Until then, though, they're Blue Team Light. Also, they're Spartan 2s, most likely, so I instantly love them, and they can do no wrong. And yeah, my research into them turned little, except a lot of social media pictures of them all working out with Schreiber, so enjoy this compilation. Other UNSC characters have been announced. Dr. Halsey and Cortana are to be played by Natasha McElhone, an English actress known for her recent work in Designated Survivor. She's been in other things. She's been in a film, Solaris, the redo, and to be honest, this has to be some of my favorite casting for the show. Granted, I'm probably biased given how much I love both of these characters. Not only does she strangely look a lot like Jen Taylor, but her American accent is very similar to Cortana in tone and timbre. She's just in the perfect range between Halsey and Cortana to play both convincingly. She's simultaneously beautiful, but also enigmatic in age, which is perfect for playing both. Not much is known about whether Cortana will remain as a disembodied voice on the show or appear in the holographic flesh, but either way, I'm sure she'll do a fabulous job. Cortana's inclusion in this show does narrow down the time frame for the show's canon period of time, if, of course, the show sticks to the canon-compliant version of Cortana's creation. The showrunners have said that they probably will not be exactly canon-compliant when it comes to every single detail, just to make the show work smoothly, but I believe they said they're trying to keep as true to the canon and to the lore of the show as possible. So I think, even though it's not a retelling of the Halo books, I don't think they'll play around too much with her creation. These 2 characters are pretty well known, so I'm going to leave this section brief just for the sake of the video's length. Shabana Azmi has been cast as everyone's favorite war crimes granny, Admiral Margaret Perengoski. Shortly before filming, she was actually in a traffic accident and hit by a bus, but just like her character, the absolute madwoman went back to filming. Perengoski is notable in the Halo universe as being perhaps one of the most ruthless, firm, and unshakable forces of ONI. Colonel Ackerson described her once as, "She was the most dangerous person in the UNSC. She was the real power in ONI. To his knowledge, only one person had ever crossed her and lived." That one person being Dr. Halsey, which means I'm sure we'll have some great conflict between them. Also, quick side tangent, as many of you know, Perengoski's heir and subordinate is Saren Osman. Like Soren, flunked out of the Spartan 2 program. If Saren is in the show, I think it would be interesting to see sort of the conflict and the parallels between her and Saren's, between her and Soren's storyline. Not much has been said about Perengoski's involvement in the show, though it likely means we'll have a strong UNSC, conspiracy, and politics subplot involving her, which isn't surprising for a Showtime show, which always means they're going to have a lot of drama, intrigue, and character interest. I can thank her agent, though, who publicly congratulated her for entering Block 3 filming, which means they're more than halfway done. You know what else that means? Showtime has enough footage to make a teaser trailer. I have the documents that prove that they finished filming halfway before the pandemic. So Showtime, while you're all social distancing, now is the time to put together some kind of trailer. You can do it. You have the footage. Do it, please, for my own sake. I'm begging you. Okay, next we're entering into two somewhat controversial casting choices, but I'm going to cover it. Captain Keyes and Miranda Keyes were announced by Showtime to be played by Danny Sapani and Olive Gray, respectively. Their casting caused a bit of controversy due to the actors not being the same race as they were in the games, with the outrage getting so vocal that Olive Gray left social media. I'm not going to touch on that here because my opinion on this issue doesn't matter, and I'm not going to change minds anyway. There will be slight changes in the portrayal of these characters, as Captain Keyes' character announcement was listed as dedicated military man, a war hero, and a caring father. He finds that working alongside his daughter and his ex-wife is usually the cause of conflict rather than comfort. Obviously, unless this report was an oversimplification for publishing, there's a big change that implies that Halsey and Keyes ever got married, which they didn't in the books. Danny Sapani has been in The Crown, Doctor Who, and other British TV, and in films such as Black Panther, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Olive Gray's Miranda Keyes was described as a brilliant UNSC commander who is dedicated to understanding the technology, language, and culture of the Covenant, but she'll have to learn to navigate the politics of the UNSC to get what she wants. Obviously, they're making her a natural genius with interests in Covenant tech as a way of making her both her mother's daughter, but clearly her father's in her military career. What significance they'll play, we've yet to see, but I suspect Miranda, at least, will be the bridge between UNSC military plotlines and ONI political subterfuge. Gray has appeared on shows like Sex Education, Fleabag, and EastEnders. Anyway, Charlie Murphy, an Irish actress with a boatload of dramas under her belt, has been announced as a character, which immediately caused some drama in the Halo community. Her character was described as an orphaned human who was raised by the alien Covenant and shares their contempt for humanity. Because she was orphaned and somehow taken by the Covenant at a young age, it's likely that she was orphaned on an outer colony, perhaps orphaned not by Covenant attack but by UNSC insurrectionist fighting. The outcry against this by fans was immediate, with many fans declaring this a total rewrite of canon. After all, if the Covenant were so hell-bent against humanity, why in the world would they ever raise a human at all, even to turn her into a weapon against her own people? Well, during one of my internet dives to find information about the show, I found this interesting comment strand on Reset Era, where Frank O'Connor got into a heated debate with other posters who were bashing Charlie Murphy's character, whose name is Maki, by the way. And he said in a closing statement, "I'm not being deliberately obtuse. I'm simply mentioning that despite her being a brand new character, the underlying information is based on existing logic. I'm not discussing plot here and now, and I'm certainly not arguing about unrevealed stuff. I can't force or compel you to feel any different than you do, and I certainly don't begrudge you your opinion. I hope you enjoy the show if you watch it, and I hope you understand that particular detail when it's explained, even if you don't care for it. This clearly means that whatever subgroup of the Covenant raises her is likely some extremist sect or subgroup with slightly deviating ideology from the main part of the Covenant. Perhaps it's like a religious splinter group or denomination, or more likely, something like ONI in that it views its mission of carrying out their faith as something that is worth any risk. It would also provide her as a contrast to the Spartans in a similar vein. I do have one final theory about Maki, and I admit it might be a bit out there, but I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, so here I go. Perhaps this Maki is the same Sangheli female commander under the Arbiter with the Swords of Sanghelios. You hear her voice in one of the missions of Halo 5. We never see her, and Maki and Maki are too similar in my mind for it to have no significance. Perhaps Maki becomes a military leader for her people? After all, even if she gets a redemption arc and ceases to hate humanity later on, I doubt she'd return to an entirely new life amongst people she feels alienated from. She'd likely remain with the Covenant or the Sangheli or whatever group raised her, and if she does have a redemption arc, would likely join Arbiter when the time for separation came. The difference in spelling could have some significance in Covenant society, or maybe this Maki is somehow related or in the same clan with her. Or maybe she's not related at all. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, though. Casting notices in November of 2018 went out for the Halo show and called for an 18 to 19-year-old actress of Asian descent to play a woman named Jenny. A few months later, April of 2019, Showtime announced that acting newcomer Yeren Ha would be playing Kwan Ah, likely that Jenny that was being cast. That was probably a filler name in the meantime. Kwan Ah was a shrewd, audacious girl from the Outer Colonies who lived during the Human Covenant War. At the age of 16, she met the Spartan 2, John 117, a meeting which came at a fateful time for them both. My gut is telling me that she comes from insurrectionist, sympathetic territory and probably does not trust the chief initially. Think sort of the children in Halo Oblivion. She'll probably be a bit insubordinate and cause a bit of chaos, but this came at a fateful time for them both probably implies that she was somehow inadvertently swept up into Master Chief's mission, and so has to tag along, as he never leaves civilians to be killed if he can help it. I can't find much out about this actress or this new character, but much as Soren will provide a sort of privateer, out-for-himself type of character for the audience to relate to, Kwan Ah will likely provide the insight of how humans on the Outer Colonies have suffered during the Human Covenant War and how they resent the UNSC. She will likely be unfamiliar with much about the Covenant, UNSC, and obviously Spartans, so she will provide a vessel for lore to be explained to her for the audience's perspective. And that's it. That's all we know about the Halo show so far.
God damn it, dude, I'm having a panic attack. I'm actually having a panic
Will you
attack.
settle down and have another cup of coffee?
I am, bro.
All right, well, fine. You know what, Barney? Give this guy a cigarette. He's freaking out.
Huh? Who?
Barney. He's the guy who tipped me off to Pepe Sylvia.
Barney? Who the hell is Barney?
You don't see Oh, shit. What the hell did he...
You've lost your mind.